back to Magic TV. My name's Craig. It's 9 o'clock, which means it's time for a Talk Magic. And I'm here today with an absolute superstar in the Magic community. Somebody who is, without a doubt, one of the, if not the best cardicians in the world, and an incredibly nice guy as well. The one and only Ben Earl. How you doing, Ben?
I'm good, thank you. Wow, lovely introduction.
It's true though. I mean, you have done...
Tell my wife. It wasn't a waste. It wasn't a waste of time, I promise.
Oh man, you have done so much. I just said to you off camera, how you found the time to even come and do this with me, I don't know, because I get tired just watching you. You are so busy. I mean,
I don't think that's a good thing.
No, you told me you've just done like 450 hours of live online content, which is incredible. I mean, that's just an incredible amount of content that you've done, and that's just recently. So
yeah, it's been a lot. I mean, I say me, it's we really. It's the Studio 52 lot. So I couldn't have done it without Henry White, Darren Lovell, and Sarah Stott. And basically, yeah, it's a strange thing because I think once the pandemic hit, we decided to do a load of lives on Instagram, which is we called Studio 52 Live. We were interviewing people, and we decided to do that purely because it felt like at the time that everyone was a bit scared, and it felt like a very, very strange moment. And so we thought, you know what, let's just do some stuff which brings people together. We can have some conversations. I get to talk with people that, I love anyway, and we'll just have a laugh. And that basically became 52 days straight of conversations with people, and it was amazing. And we didn't record any of it so that they became live events. So because everyone was isolated and no one could do anything, we thought, let's bring people together in a live moment. And so we didn't record any of them. So for that reason, and it was amazing. I mean, we had everyone on, and the last week was incredible because we had, David Williamson, David Blaine, Steve Forty, who never does anything online like that, and then David Copperfield. And it was an amazing, just on Instagram, on just a little square on my phone. It was amazing.
It shows the reach that you've got, though, Ben, that you can get all of these people that will say yes. I mean, David Copperfield...
Either that or no one was doing anything because it was a pandemic.
David Copperfield before that never did anything live. Never did anything.
It was amazing. Yeah, it was really amazing. And I think that, again, the work that went in behind the scenes with both Sarah and Darren and Henry to just do a load of stuff. Darren made a load of beautiful kind of films about it, and Henry was kind of organizing a load of stuff behind the scenes. And I just sat there and chatted really, but it was a really cool thing. And at the end of it, we did a 24-hour fundraiser where I was online on Instagram for 24 hours straight and just doing the same thing. It was great fun. And then we just did a load of chat, raise money for Mind. And yeah, I was really proud of doing that, to be honest. It was a really good feeling, and it felt like it kind of brought a lot of people together. So there was that, and we did that. That was on average about 2 hours per night minimum. So with 52 days, it's 104 hours right there, straight off the bat. And it was more because we then did other events. I think we did a couple of free lectures and all kinds of stuff before then going on doing a load of other stuff. But yeah, it was it's just been a really strange time because previous to this year, I wouldn't have thought I would have been doing so much stuff online, really. It just didn't ever feel like something appealed. It never appealed to me as a medium to do magic, but it did strike me as a really interesting medium to have conversations. And at that particular time, it felt like Instagram was the only way to do that because it was also open to everyone. So everyone could come in. There was no barrier to entry. If you had a phone, I mean, even Instagram doesn't cost anything. So if you had a phone and you could push on the live, you could sit down and watch and participate in a live event. So it felt like to us the kind of easiest way to do that. And yeah, I'm still quite proud of that. But like I said, it was quite a few of us trying to make that happen. But it was great fun.
And it's very special that it was live. It's no longer, you can't go back and watch it.
Yeah. we still get emails all the time saying, where's the Steve Forty one? I desperately want to see it. I really want to see the one with Chris Kenner again. And it's just, I mean, people have said to us, you must have actually recorded them. And we said, no, we really, really didn't. We wanted them to become these things that happened and then just went like a live event. I mean, it was really hard to create a live event like that. And it was, yeah, so yeah, it was great. I really genuinely, it felt quite special. I'm quite proud of what we did there. It was great fun. I loved it. I loved it.
Right. And I want to talk in a bit more about Studio 52 and what you're doing there, because there's so much going on. But before we get to that, can we do a bit of backstory, first of all,
Yeah.
and find out a little bit more about you? And I suppose the first question I've got, I always ask everyone the same question, which is, what is your origin story? Can you briefly talk us through how you got into magic? Because it feels like you've always been around, but there must have been a time where you found magic. When was that? What was the origin story?
Yeah, like something out of X-Men. Falling into a pit of acid or be exposed to. So, I mean, I'm sure everyone has a very kind of long story about how they got in. It's very straight. I mean, for me, I got into magic by accident because I came across a book in a library when I was about 12 years old that on sleight of hand, and it was expert card technique. And I stupidly, because I was 12, I thought that sleight of hand was illegal. I don't know why I thought it was illegal. I just thought it was a thing that you know, it was nefarious, that you shouldn't be able to learn it from a book. So I stole it from the library because I thought if I took it, I was only, how old was I? I was 12. So I thought if I take it to the librarian, she would obviously say one of two things. Either you can't have this because this shouldn't be in here, or you can't have this because you're not old enough. So I you know, just threw it out the window and then went around and grabbed it. And then I just started learning the stuff that was in there. And there was no connection to magic for me. There was no connection to performance or to showing it to someone else. It was purely being fascinated with the, you know, there was things like Paul Rossini and Charlie Miller. There were these names that were in that book and these characters. And I was aware of this world that existed, this subculture that went back in time. And I just found it fascinating. And then I discovered that, oh, hang on, I can actually show these things to people. And so I started showing some of the things to people, and people liked it. And then I went off and studied psychology and did a few other bits and pieces. And I still never thought of myself as ever doing magic for a living. And then I remember one year just kind of doing some event, or something happened where the opportunity to do an event came up, and I did this thing, and I thought, wow, this is better than doing the job that I was previously doing. So I just started doing that. And then I pretty much was, I've always thought quite deeply about magic. I've always loved the kind of practice of it, the study of it, the thinking about it. I've always loved those aspects of it. But then I found an outlet for kind of doing it professionally. And I was doing close up for a number of years, parties, wedding, all that type of gigging stuff. But there was always something in the back of my mind that was always, it wasn't completely fulfilling. So I kind of started to venture into writing and kind of publishing some small booklets and bits and pieces like that. I tried a magazine for a bit, and that didn't feel right either. And I was constantly testing the water. And then a number of years went past where I really didn't know what I wanted to do, quite a few years, right up until my kind of early 20s, where I was just really, or mid to mid 20s, really, just really unsure with, well, do I want to just do gigs for a living? I don't necessarily want to work in the magic world and do what they're doing, or, you know, and it was really quite difficult. And then I did some television stuff. I did stuff on Penn and Teller and stuff on Channel 4. And all of these things were never really, like my drive was never to be famous or any of those things. My drive was always, can I enjoy magic? And there was always a part of me thinking, I want to go back to that stage where I was kind of 12, like loving doing this stuff. And then it just took a number of years of me kind of playing around with different things until I eventually thought to myself, you know, what I've got to do is firstly, it's quite lonely doing magic. You know, if you're performing, you're on the road by yourself, or you're gigging by yourself, and you're constantly by yourself. And that aspect of it, I realized I didn't want anymore. The other part was I always felt that if I was producing stuff in the magic world or writing or whatever it was, I wasn't fully in control, or even doing television stuff or anything. There was always someone else in control on some level of the delivery or the creation or something of what I was doing. So I thought, well, that's the other thing. I want to be able to try and have control and have people around me. And then the other major thing was to try and build something that could be bigger than myself, which if you're a performer, you can only ever be, it's all about you. So it was the reason why over time I thought, you know what, I'm going to build a company where I can be in control of the material. I can have people around me that I think are talented people that I can learn from and work together collaboratively. I love that process of doing that. And then over time, build something that in the company can become bigger than myself. And at the moment, we've only been running 18 months, but most of it's been piggybacking off of what I do. But ultimately, over time, it will grow to become bigger than me. That's the goal. I think that's really, in a nutshell, as quick as possible to go from 12 to now. That's basically it.
Well, that's fantastic. I've got some questions that I want to ask you about that whole process. Now, first of all, one question that I get on this channel an awful lot is people who have maybe recently come into magic and they have a real difficult time practicing. They find it very difficult to sit down and practice. They want to be better, but they really struggle with that side of things. As somebody who's openly said, I love practicing, and let's be honest, you're a phenomenal magician, but you know millions of moves, it feels like anyway. Do you have any advice on making that process easier?
Well, I mean, that's a big topic there, because there's two things. There's being better, wanting to be better, and then there's practicing, and they're two slightly different things. I think that ultimately, when it comes to being better, I think one of the major problems is that we set our bar very low. So often magicians are looking for reactions, and it's an extremely low bar, because most effects, when you learn them, you can get reactions very quickly. If you think back when you first started doing magic, you can perform something and get reactions relatively quickly. And also the idea of a reaction, it's not qualified in any way. What does that mean? Like, what type of reaction? What were you going for? Is it just a noise, a shout, a scream? What were you trying to create? So I think it comes back to, I think when you want to be better, like, what are you going for? Like, what type of reaction do you want? What type of idea do you want to communicate, or what type of thing do you want to do? And that's a kind of a deep question to work out. And I think, to not skip over that necessarily, but there's a lot you can unpack in that. Because I think if you're just going for reactions, there's so many effects that you can do that get reactions, and you end up like a patchwork quilt of effects and ideas that aren't cohesive and don't represent you. They're just a kind of these things. So I think the first thing is to get better, is to try to think, what am I actually going for? Like, what do I want? What do I want them to feel or think or walk away with? What do they take away with them? Do they think I just saw a guy do some cool things? Or did they have an experience which was amazing? Are they left with a philosophical dilemma? Are they left with an appreciation of something? Did they laugh? Like, there's a whole heap of things you can unpack. And then let's, for argument's sake, say that we've defined that, because I think that takes a long time to pick apart and understand. But once you do, let's imagine you have a clear idea. You're going to have to go around breaking down, how do I go about doing that? How do I practice that? How do I acquire the skills? And I think that it gets broken down in a number of ways. One is the idea itself. Like, you have to, first of all, when you're practicing something, you have to think, is it worth it? Because if you spend a huge amount of time practicing something, there are opportunity costs. There are, if you're practicing 10 years practicing the middle deal, for example, I can tell you that it's going to be rather useless to some extent. I mean, it's largely not useful outside of being able to show to other people in your community that you can do a middle deal. It might be a kind of like climbing Everest or something, but it really doesn't have a huge amount of uses. And so you have to put something in the context of what are all the things that I haven't practiced as a result of not doing that? There are opportunity costs. So that's one. And the other is diminishing returns. There's always a point where you're practicing where it doesn't matter how much extra work you do, you're only shaving off tiny, tiny parts. Is it worth putting all that work in? So there's a lot of things to think like that. And then there's also, the how you practice. So even if you decide I'm going to do this and give it this amount of time and it's worth it because of this, I'm going to get to this standard, then how do we actually go about practicing? I think that so many people, when they're practicing, they'll sit down and, in front of a mirror, and they sit like this and they do the move or whatever it may be. But there's a real problem, which is that the way in which you practice, unless it represents or reflects some form of reality, it's going to be largely not useful, because there is no social context. You're locked inside of your own head practicing these things. And often if you're staring down at your hands locked in this position, is that exactly how you're going to be doing it in the real world? Because the moment you have to move and talk, you're going to have a dramatic, your brain is going to partition a lot of resources away from doing this in order to deal with the social context. It's why in sport, you don't just, someone that can hit in basketball, hit 3-pointers in the gym endlessly by themselves. It doesn't represent game day when you've got a defender in your face and a screaming crowd and the shot clock ticking down. So practice, to some extent, you want to try to imitate elements of the real world. And the real world has got all kinds of things in it. Broken rhythms, it's got interruptions, it's got pauses, it's got moments that go wrong. And there's all this a kind of a living nature. So there are ways to try to kind of bring that into your work. So one of the things I often talk about with practice is to try and practice in what I call a dynamic way, so that a particular move has a range. So it can be proactive or reactive. So you can do a move proactively and say, hold your hand out, or you can do a move and go, oh, pardon, sorry, and do it on the offbeat, but it's the same technique, and you have to try to practice those things. And sometimes it's by imagining like invisible people and having invisible conversations. And you have to really be able to simulate that in your mind. It's a really important factor. So the way in which we practice and what we practice and then why we're practicing, it's a really big subject. And I think that it's not just read the thing and relentlessly do it while watching TV. That's a little bit, it's good to kind of get an element of the feel of a move, maybe the bare bones of something or whatever it is. But then you have to step it up. And ultimately, all the things you're practicing most of the time are designed to not be seen. So when you're putting so much attention on this thing that you're practicing, it's very difficult to not communicate that intention when you perform. So it's magic is hard. Magic is it's unlike every other art form out there. Almost every other art form is displaying its skill. A juggler displays its skill. A musician displays or isn't trying to hide anything they do. Whereas with magic, a large part of our skill set is to actually hide the very things that we're practicing. And so it's a particularly beautiful and deeply interesting art form. And so it presents really unique challenges for how we overcome a lot of those problems. That's the reason why I'm so fascinated with it. There's nothing else I've ever got involved in that has kept me interested like magic has, because it's just so beautiful. It's got so many little subtleties and it's living. I love it.
And you can tell you're so passionate about it. That was fantastic advice. You mentioned obviously doing some TV work, and one of the things that put you on the map, so to speak, was the initial Penn Teller performance. You were in the first season, and it was you and John who ended up winning and go the first episode. Sorry, the first. Well,
it was actually a one-off special.
Yeah, the very first.
It wasn't even a series or a thing. It was just a one-off 1-hour special, which they used as a pilot to then as a backdoor pilot for getting a series. So yeah, it was just a one-off special.
So. You said earlier on you had no interest in being famous, and I can tell that. What made you decide to actually go on to Penn Teller?
Good question. So, this is the weird thing. So I said no for several months to what's going on, and I had a lot of people that around me that were telling me to go on, and Johnny Thompson had called me up several times and tried to convince me to go on, but I just really wasn't interested. Because I thought, what's the end game of any of those things? The end game is going to be to sell a tour or something. If I don't have a tour, what's the point? Or for fame, for the sake of fame, what's the point? So I didn't care about those things. And then I had a really peculiar reason for wanting to do it, which was the particular effect that I did on there was to be able to find 4 aces from a shuffle deck.
Yeah.
And it'd been something that I'd heard that the kind of Scani legend that he would do. And I'd spent years practicing, and because there was no method anywhere in print. So I'd invented my own ways of doing it, but it was incredibly difficult to do. And so I thought to myself, stupidly, if I can do it on a stage in front of 2 people in terms of Penn Teller judging me, with an audience of 700 strong and multiple cameras from every angle, and if I can deal with the adrenaline and do it in that moment, then I can do it. And I thought, well, that's a challenge to see. And what's the worst case scenario? Worst case scenario is if the show's no good, it's not my name on the show, it's Penn Teller's name. And if I mess up, so what? Mr. Magic got his trick wrong. It's not like, you know, if you're an engineer and a building falls down, or a surgeon and someone dies. I mean, it's not a terrible situation. So I thought, well, I'll just test myself in that environment. And I just purely was going on to see if I could do it in that environment. Because it's like I said, with practice, if you practice at home, you know, people always say that. They're like, oh, you know, I you know, and people probably hear you practice something, you're really smooth at doing it. And then you go to perform it, and there's just an element of it, you're not as smooth. And you think, man, I could get this so much better at home. And the reason is because at home, there's no adrenaline. If you mess it up and you go, oh, you have to start again, you don't berate yourself for getting it wrong. You just keep doing it. You get in a flow, and you've probably done the thing 20, 30, 40 plus times in a row, and you get into a flow with it. Whereas when you've got to do something once and you wheel in the block of ice, that's it. You've got to do it once. Like, that to me was a real test to go, can I just go on and do it under those conditions? If I can do that and deal with that, then I'll know that I can do it. Which is insane, but that was really the reason for me doing it. That was it.
I love that you went on there just to challenge yourself. That's amazing.
Yeah, and it's probably stupid. I probably wouldn't do it now. That's the crazy thing. I'm sure I wouldn't. I don't think I would have that same mindset now. I think I'd be not too scared, but whatever. I mean, most stupid, maybe. I don't know. That was, for whatever, it maybe had nothing else going on in my life. I just felt that the kind of challenge of that felt like an actual challenge. Whereas just doing a trick and hoping it goes well didn't feel, you know, doing stuff and getting reactions from people, as you know, it's not really a challenge. Like, really, once you've been doing it for a certain amount of time, you know it's fine. There's no real challenge in that. And so for me, that felt like an actual challenge. And also because it was brand new, you know, people can look back and think they know what the show is. When you have no idea what that is because it's never appeared before, you have no concept of how any of it's going to manifest. So that felt to me like a really, really, really interesting challenge. Yeah, that's what it was.
It is true what you say. I've seen so many magicians, and you can tell that they've not pushed themselves out their comfort zone, and they're just going through the motions, and it shows in their performances.
Well, I think it's the nature of my life. Like, I'm always trying to put myself outside of my comfort zone. Always. There's never a point where I'm trying to stay comfortable. So doing that in the first place was definitely one. Doing the show with Channel 4 was another one. Then I tried to do a number of things to do with writing and stuff, and trying to produce material myself, and that was an interesting challenge. I had to learn how to write and produce and use InDesign and Photoshop. I had to teach myself how to take photographs. Like, all of those things were quite big challenges. And then even starting Studio 52 and the company was like, can I build a company and do the things that I want to do? It's completely out of my, and the same with doing all the lives online. Wasn't used to doing stuff in that format, but I'm constantly like, I don't know what it is, maybe I'm some kind of a strange pervert, but I like the feeling of feeling a little bit nervous, a little bit out of my depth, and a little bit like I've got to like survive. There's a bit of that I like. And to be honest, it's one of the reasons that when a lot of the material we've done with Studio 52 over the last year, you know, we run a number of courses called the Deep Magic Seminars. And that was really hard. I thought, I'm going to do 4 weeks of courses online. And we're going to have to try and create a whole camera setup. And we're going to, you know, it was a massive technical challenge as well as delivery. And can we actually galvanize a group of people to go through this process and can we deliver something that has a feeling to it, that has a sense of closure and purpose? Like, that's a massive challenge. So I think that, I mean, they might not be to some people. I'm sure that Elon Musk would just be like, what? You know, I'm sending people to Mars. You know, I'm making the stars move. I'm building electric cars and putting them on rockets and shooting them out to space. You're trying to do card tricks. You know, like, it's not the world's greatest challenge, but to me, whatever it is, to me, I find those things quite challenging. So I like doing them.
That's fantastic. Now, you've mentioned a couple of times the show on Channel 4. Obviously, we're talking about Trick Artist. Up until that point, you had a reputation as a cardician, and a fantastic cardician that could do anything. The performance on Penn and Teller cemented that. Then you did Trick Artist, which I love, by the way, but it was very different. You were jumping out of windows.
Yeah.
We saw a side of Ben Earl that we'd never seen before. You've talked about how you've always had people, you weren't always in control up until Studio 52. Was the choice of the material that was on Trick Artist, were we happy with it? Because it felt like it wasn't you, even though
no,
I did enjoy it. It was very different to what we knew of you, Ben.
Yeah, 100%. I think that, you know, I suppose I look at it like, if you look at, say, certain filmmakers and you look at early work, you kind of go, well, you can see where they're trying to find something. And again, to me, that was me trying to find something. I was like, if I push myself in this direction, let's just put myself so far out of my comfort zone. I mean, if you care about fame and you care about those types of things, you probably won't make those types of decisions. And that's why I think in the process, I had, you know, managers and TV producers and a lot of people, a lot of the time were often perplexed by some of the decisions that I would make, because I think that they're so used to people doing anything they can to be famous or be on television, that I wasn't interested in any of the stuff around it, any of the publicity. I just didn't care about any of that stuff, which they assumed I would. There's a major assumption there, but I just didn't care. I was just interested in going, well, let's try this. This is mental. Let's do that. Let's see how that, you know, and whether it's good or bad or works or doesn't work, whatever. And I think it's interesting because there's also a lot of stuff on that show that I had control of, but then it's so bizarre. Like, if you look at a movie and you play sad music over a certain scene and then you change it to like an upbeat hip hop track, it would have an entirely different feel. And so the interesting thing is that a large part of the show we made wasn't really the show that also appeared. So in terms of the way it was edited, the stuff that was on the cutting room floor, the things that never made air, the way things were put together, also created a completely different thing. And again, even that I didn't care about, because to some extent, because I learned a massive amount. I learned about TV production. I learned about the kind of motivations of individuals in that process, and how the machine works and what it cares about. And that was a really interesting learning process. So I think that for me, I wouldn't change anything. All of those things were just really valuable. And I had a massive amount of fun. You know, I got to do some crazy things, so many things that never even made the show, just insane things. And, you know, we had great nights away, and it was just, I had a really great time. It was also a really stressful time because I was doing massively long hours, and my son was born within the first few days of pre-production. And so and I just become a dad. And so I was dealing with a lot of crazy stuff where all of a sudden this show was being made. I was doing all these mental things. I was having almost no sleep. I had a wife at home with a newborn, and it was a really crazy time. And so now I think that if I'm being busy or stressful now, everything I'm doing now, even if I'm working really hard, it feels like a massage in comparison to that, you know. So it was great. It was great.
Well, it's the holy grail of a lot of people that come into this industry, that they want to be famous. Oh, I want to be a famous magician. I want to be a TV magician. That's why we see so many people going on BGT.
Yep.
I know you don't want to be famous, and you never did, and that wasn't your motivation. But before we move on from TV and Penn and Teller and Trick Artist, do you have any advice that you can share for people that are watching this that might, because at the end of the day, you had your own TV show. That's massive. That's huge. Are there any advice as to how people can get on the radar of a TV production company? And
Well, I mean, I'm probably the wrong person to ask because I'm, you know, I also turned down a second series like that, which is like when they came to me and spoke to me and said, we're going to do a second one. I said, well, I'm not interested. If it's going to be, they're going to it'd be more of the same. I said, well, that was definitely why I don't want to do it unless we can do something different. I'm probably the wrong person to ask in many respects because I have a very different attitude about it. Also, things move so drastically in those industries. I think outside of how you actually practically do that, I think the thing to really think about is your own personal motivations, because what it really is, regardless of how things work right now or how they will in the future, it is a very different thing to what appears on television. 90% of the work that you do might be stuff that you don't want to do. For this tiny, the tip of the iceberg is that show. The rest of the stuff that goes around the outside might not be what you expect. I also think that you have to question why do you really want that? Like, if you really do and you just think, look, I just want to be famous, right? Then maybe just go for it all the time and just smash it. But if you want to be great at magic, or you really want to be good at that, that's an entirely different thing. And again, doing stuff in those environments is, in a weird way, is a low bar. It doesn't guarantee you'll be good. It doesn't guarantee anything like that. And I don't know. It's a weird question. I think I'm always suspicious of the motivation to want to be famous. I think that on some level it compromises the stuff that matters to some extent. That said, you know, I mean, there are people out there that are great, you know, that happen to be, you know, Darren's great, Blaine's great, but I don't know if they necessarily wanted to be famous or if they found themselves in those positions, had those opportunities, and felt like that was the best outlet for them, which it may well have been, you know. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's a big old thing. I also think it works differently for everyone. You can listen to 100 people tell 100 stories, and they'll have different routes in, different experiences. You just, you know, keep doing what you're doing, and, you know, try and take opportunities where you can. That's all you can do.
Perfect. Now, I have one other question before we move on to Studio 52, which is, you've created a lot of magic over the years, and obviously the first thing that you offered to the magic community was, I think it was it the Past Midnight DVD set?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which was Alakazam, I believe.
That's right.
So what made, obviously, you know, you said that was a period of your life where you're out gigging and you're doing close-up gigs and so on and so forth. I suppose the question is, what made you decide to offer your creations to the community? I can imagine you were always already creating for yourself, but what made you decide to want to actually put that out there?
So again, a weird one. I had no intention of ever, at that point, ever doing anything in the magic world. It didn't seem to be an interesting challenge or something that I could do anything with. And so I know I was gigging, but not very successfully. I was half gigging, and I was gigging, but then I at the same time didn't want to be gigging, and it was a really strange time period. And I'd been at conventions like I had been for years, just, you know, showing people magic and stuff, but with no intention of putting anything out. And someone came to me and said, someone from Alakazam said, I did some particular thing, and they were like, well, that's what the hell's happening? That's amazing. You should do something with that. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe. I didn't really think about it. And then they said, well, look, we could film a load of stuff. And what I suddenly thought of it as was an opportunity to, like, a cathartic release, just to put a load of material out that I no longer wanted to deal with anymore. So it's like I could let it go, because all the time it was in my head, it was like bubbling around, or things I was playing with. If I put this stuff out, then I don't have to think about it anymore. Yeah. And I could just, that's a kind of, oh, okay, great. And so I was like, all right, great. If, you know, it might earn some money or it might do some things. But again, there was never, I never do anything with it, well, with the exception of Studio 52, which we're going to get onto, with any particular agenda. It was always like, in this moment, I'll do this because it feels good. And that was it. And I had no intention of really doing anything other. And I found the filming, I mean, if you watch that, you see a very different form of me. Because again, I wasn't really 100% sure how it was being done. And I was quite naive to a lot of the process. And So I just kind of did it. It went out, but it was really successful. And so people loved it. But I had no interest at the time in terms of touring or doing anything else with it. It was just a thing that went out. So then when I wasn't around, people just assumed I didn't want to be around. It wasn't really that. I just wasn't there. It was just a thing I did. I still didn't fully consider myself, I don't know if I fully considered myself like a magician at that point. I think I was still playing with the idea of it. But, you know, again, there was a lot of stuff on there which people really liked, you know, and I was really happy about that. People still talk to me about it today.
So what made you decide to come back to creating? Because obviously you went away from that for a long time during the Penn Teller years and trick artist years, but then you talked about how you self-published some stuff. There was obviously Gambit, I think, during that period, and
Yep.
You made some appearances at the Session Convention. What made you decide to kind of come back into the magic community? Was it another case of you wanted to release material that you'd no longer used, or was there a different reason at that point later on in your career?
It was slightly different. So a little bit of that. I always felt like I wanted to do something that once I put it out there, because I always felt that I never create something to release it. I never like I do something and then release it. It's always like something I've lived with for years. For me, the only way to truly understand something is by living with it for a long time. And so it was like once I'd lived with it for long enough, I would put it out there. That was one thing. And then there was a number of things that I in my own work at that stage, I was like, you know what? I'm quite proud of that thing. You know, we all have a couple of things that were like, I'm quite happy with what I did there. And I kind of realized, you know what? If I put it in print as opposed to a digital format, it kind of exists in a slightly more permanent way. And it will kind of be recorded, and it'll be something that, you know, might have use to someone in the future, or someone might reference, but it will just be a little mark in magic history of just this guy thought this thing once, and it's kind of okay. Like that's what I wanted to do. And so, and in that, I suddenly started feeling, oh, this is quite interesting. I'll publish this, but I was still dealing with formats. Like, how do I do it though? I don't want to go to a magic company necessarily and make a DVD. I know, I'll just make a magazine or something. But then that required so much additional work. And it was a nightmare to try and do it. And I think in all this time, it's for me, I've just been in process for so many years of like just testing the fences. That scene in Jurassic Park where they say the raptors are testing the fences, and they find the weak spots. That's what I was always doing, is just going like, okay, this bit, no, and then backing away, and then do this, no. And it was always based on what made me feel good and where I got a sense of meaning from. You know, as human beings, we don't have to worry about survival anymore. We have done for thousands of years. Nowadays, we don't so much. And so as a result, we have to worry about other things, and we start thinking about happiness and meaning. And I think that for me, I started thinking about, wow, I don't know what it is about writing and contributing in this way, but it feels good. I like it. And so I from there started thinking, okay, let's do that. But then I had to go to conventions, and I go, oh yeah, I've got to do a lecture. Oh, but you know, how do I do this to show this to people? Because it's not really like it is in the real world. It's like a table, and then there's magicians, and they're not laymen, so they don't react in, oh, that. And I really couldn't get used to how to bridge that gap. So I didn't like that delivery of it. So then I started writing more pamphlets and other bits and pieces, and I just thought, I'm going to write them, keep them small, put them out there. And you know what? Dennis Baer for the Conjuring Archive will take them. A few other people will take them around the world, and they exist then. They'll probably never disappear. And so that was really my goal. And then I think just slowly over time, I started to realize that I can actually find a way to bridge that gap and enjoy the process of communicating it. And I think what happened was I actually quit magic. I don't think I've ever told anyone. I don't think I've ever told anyone this before. So I quit magic entirely. Yeah, this was about 4, 5, 6, 7, about 7 or 8 years ago. About 7 years ago, I just went, I've had enough. I can't quite find the angle that I want. I can't quite find how I want to be. So I'm done. And I had a number of job opportunities that I could have gone into that I felt like, you know what, they're not going to be around forever. maybe I'll go into those. And so I decided, yeah, I'm done. And I had quit. There was no kind of, I was thinking of quitting. I quit. I spoke to my wife and said, look, I'm done. And she was like, you know what? I'm happy for you because, you know, that seems like a decision that's right. And I was like, yep, I'm done. And that's it. And so I made arrangements to do this other stuff. And I thought, you know what? Just before I go, I'm going to do two things I've never done. I'm going to put out a book and I'm going to do a tour. And on that tour, I'll say the things I want to say in the way that I want to say them, giving no cares because I don't care. And I'm going to do a book, and then at least there's a book that's existed and it can be on a shelf somewhere and it feels more permanent than a manuscript. If I've done those two things, I don't care what I earn from them or anything else, but I'll be happy then that I've at least done those things. I'll have done quite a lot of things in magic and it would have been fun. So that's what I did. And so I spoke to Vanishing Ink at the time, and they basically, I'd written this series of booklets called Less is More. And we thought what we'd do is collate them, re-edit them. I'll add more stuff into them, you know, bolster it much more, put all more additional thoughts that I'd had in the years and make a really solid thing. And I'll go and do a tour. So I did a tour of Scandinavia. And I think I did 22 dates in like 18 days or something stupid. It was like, or no, it was 22 flights in like 18 days or whatever it was. But it was about 3 weeks of all these little clubs in Skavania and Boulder above the Nordic, and Trondheim and Oslo, and then Sweden. And I had the most amazing time on that tour. I just had an absolute blast. Like, Norway is beautiful, way more beautiful than I ever thought anything. You know, I thought it was like grey and flat, and it's stunning. And I had friends out there and I had a blast. And when I was talking and performing the things that I wanted to in my way, people were reacting, and there was a sense of enjoyment that I'd worked out how to bridge that gap in a way that I enjoyed. And I was talking about training methods and stuff that I use, and people vibing off of that. And the book came out, and that was successful. And then when I then came back, I was then asked to do a couple of lectures. And I then kind of had all of this experience from doing this stuff. I knew how to bridge this gap. And all of a sudden I felt, oh, I know how to be in this space and enjoy the process of talking and communicating without it feeling small. It can feel like I'm contributing to the art form, and maybe people are really going to vibe off of it. And that's got meaning to me beyond just look at me, I'm clever, or look at this stuff. Like, I can actually connect with people that I love magic. You love magic. When you have two people that love it, and you both have a common language that you share, and when you both talk, no one else understands outside. You guys are having this conversation, no one else gets it. And I'd learned how to kind of connect with other elements of the community in a way that felt meaningful. And so from then on, I was like, oh, I think I know what I have to do. I've just got to work out now how to now take all of that and somehow drive it in a way that I'm happy with. And, you know, that's really kind of where we got to when I started forming Studio 52.
That's fantastic. And I love the fact that you were testing throughout your career various different things that you weren't happy with, but everything that you've tried has been amazingly successful. Like Past Midnight, one of the best-selling DVDs of all time. Penn Teller fooled them, Trick Artist, who offered a second series. He said no. Like, even something like Gambit, everybody wanted one of those and nobody could get them. Like,
you know what? Though? It's pure luck. It's pure luck. I basically Forrest Gumped most of the things that I've done. There was never any intention. I think sometimes there's a value that comes from, maybe not nowadays, but there was back then a little bit of this evasive feel where there's kind of an allure of it. But to me, there was no ego attached to that. That was me literally not wanting to be there because I didn't know what I wanted to do. So most of it is just genuinely luck. It's just a bit of luck and circumstance. So, you know, I can't really take credit for most of that stuff.
But that brings us now to Studio 52. So the question is, for those people that haven't heard about it, or for those people that don't know what it is, what's the mission statement? Why did you set it up, and what are you hoping to achieve?
So, like I said previously, or maybe I can't remember if I did actually. Maybe I've just been talking all day. The thing for me was about, I was gigging a lot, and I felt on my own. I felt that I didn't have control of material in other areas. Mm-hmm. And even when it comes to doing tours or producing book, there was always other people involved in it. So I thought, I don't want to be on my own. I want to have control. So I need to build a team of people, and we'll work on stuff in the way we want. And then I want to be able to build something that's bigger than me, because ultimately I know that I end up being in front of the camera a lot, and my name's on stuff, and I get that. But weirdly, I'd always rather be the guy behind the guy, or I'd rather kind of be in the background. But it's annoyingly, I end up having to be in the front in order to push the things that I want. And I felt that the only way to make something bigger than me was to have a company that could be. I can never be bigger than me. I can only be me. So I felt that doing that, I could have a group of people, and I worked with a really talented bunch of people in Henry White, Darren Lovell, and Sarah Stott. Massively talented in so many areas, and we just collaboratively work. We think of ideas and projects, and one of our goals is to try to create different elements of community, to kind of bond elements of community and create conversations that don't always exist, and experiences that don't exist. I'm trying to create the things that I wish I'd had when I was 15 and couldn't find. And we're only 18 months in. And so, and 12 months of which has been a pandemic. So we've been restricted, but that's really what we're trying to do. And to try and do great magic along the way, try and teach and communicate and bond and inspire if possible, open up thought, create conversations and make connections all over the world. And I think that doing so in a way where it can become a meaningful thing for other people, not just a magic shop that sells magic to people, but to try and create something which has a different feel at the heart, and also is about becoming genuinely better and finding meaning. Most magic shops aren't there to make you a better magician. They're there to make you a better consumer of magic products. And that's fine. Those things can exist. I'm not saying they shouldn't exist, but it's nice to have other options. And to me, it was like, where is the option to genuinely try and help with ways of thinking about what you're doing and how you're practicing and what your drives are. Most of that stuff is very, very, or it doesn't really exist. So I think that was really the goal. And so we started the company, and we started writing some books. I wrote a series of books called The Shift. We then did the Studio 52 lives, which went across Instagram. We then run the Deep Magic seminars. And those seminars were great because there was a group of people, some of which will be watching this interview at some point, who we really bonded. And there's like a whole, it's like a family. And it's amazing, the kind of connection that exists there. And we just want to be able to kind of continue that and develop and build and grow bigger things. And then this coming up soon, when this goes out, it'll be different. But we're doing a 2-day event, which will be tomorrow at starting. But it's a 2-day event called Beyond the Book. That book I told you about, Less is More, that I did with Vanishing Ink. We're doing a 2-day event where I'm not only going to be going through that book, but adding loads of stuff that wasn't in there and expanding it and then going beyond it. But so not only is that a great kind of vehicle, a kind of a way to kind of guide through those 2 days, and it's all live but also recorded, so everyone gets access to it over time. Anyone interested that is watching this will be able to find that on the Studio 52 website. But the idea is also to create a 2-day convention feel where between the things that are happening, there's going to be open hangouts running so that we can create like a real feel of a load of people together for 2 days going through something and getting to a place. And I think there's something about that over a kind of condensed 2-day period that was really interesting, because the Deep Magic seminars that we did ran over 4 weeks, and it's a really long, a huge amount of time to do that. And I think it's a bit of a marathon to do. So I wanted to see if we could kind of create a very similar feeling over 2 days and see if we could kind of do that. So yeah, it's a lot of stuff. But look, at the end of the day, to me, it doesn't feel like work, or it doesn't feel, because I just love it. I just love it. It's not like digging ditches. It's not like actual work, is it? I don't have any calluses on my hands. Look, they're soft. It's just fun.
But what you're trying to do here with Studio 52 is you're trying to literally redefine an industry, because the way that things have always ran for a long, long time is with, a big wholesaler who basically controls everything and then sends it down to various magic shops. And that's the way that it's always been done. And
Yeah.
I've talked about this on the channel before. There is a real problem in this industry with very substandard magic tricks being produced, very substandard teaching material, downloads. I spoke to Scott Alexander the other week, and he said that he firmly believes that there's tricks out there, downloads out there that were created by somebody who knows nothing about magic. When they woke up, they took a camera, they filmed it, they edited it in the afternoon, and it's probably for sale in the evening. And new people that are coming into magic are not being taught by the people that you and I were, the greats of magic. They're being taught by people, and let's be honest here, that have no right teaching because they don't really know what they're doing themselves in many ways. And you're trying to change that. It's amazing.
Well, there's a couple of ways to answer that. I think one way, I'm not trying to change anything, because to me, that's always going to exist, and it's always going to exist in every single industry, not just ours, forever. So to me, it's like, that's fine. Let it be. What I'm suggesting is there should be alternative choices instead of it being the only way to go. If in many other industries, you can experience that form of interaction with the industry easily, but there's also another choice. There are also other ways to go. There are other niches. The problem is that most industries, their niches within those industries are bigger than our entire one. Our problem isn't any of the individual sellers. Our problem is the fact that it's so small. It's such a small industry that in order to survive, it has to be able to work out a way to leverage kind of commercial value from everything. And so, like I said, it's about trying to sell you magic, not make you a better magician. And so when that's the primary focus, is to sell you magic, there's going to be a compromise. It's going to constantly compromise. And I feel incredibly lucky and privileged to be able to have grown up at a time where this level of interaction wasn't there. I had to travel to international in London and by train, and I had to buy a book, and I'd have to really be very careful with what I chose to spend my money on, because I didn't have much money to spend, and I'd devour everything in that book. And I remember looking at people like Williamson, Chris Power, Darren Brown, David Blaine, Steve Forty, Ricky J, like Chan Canasta, like those are all the people in my head, the ghosts that kind of exist behind me, kind of influencing what I do. And I feel so lucky. Bill Malone, I mean, there's so many of them that were just so amazing. Leonard Green, when he first appeared on the scene, was just like such a strange new thing. And I feel that the lack of choice and availability of material to me at the time was actually a good thing in many ways. Now people are just, they have so much access to anything they want, and you're in complete control of your own learning. It's not healthy to some extent. If you were to learn jiu-jitsu or something else, like you can't just like look at some tutorials online and teach yourself. Like on some level, there has to be some formal structured process of learning. And some people don't want that. Some people might not care. They might want to go to a school that hands out black belts that is no tomorrow. But there are other places where they think, no, I actually want to become legitimately good. And so I think that for me, what I'm trying to do is, again, I'm testing the fences. I'm finding ways to discover how to develop something different that really is what fulfills me. It's relatively self-indulgent, but my instinct is that I can't try and connect to everyone. You know, so many people have so many different things. I just think, look, you know what? I know what I love, and I know there are hundreds of people that love the same thing in the same way. And so what I'm going to do is build a thing that does a thing in a certain way. And all the people that like that, great, they can come in. And hopefully that will inspire other people to build similar things in different areas. And so what you'll have is those little pockets of interest that you can go into in those areas, but that big magic wholesaler down to magic shop supplier, that will also be there. You know, for me, it's not a zero-sum game. It's not like there's only a limited amount of resources. To me, it's like all of this stuff can expand exponentially. Yeah. So I cast no value judgment on what anyone does. They can all do their own thing. To me, I just think I just want to do the thing I want to do. And if someone else likes it, great. And if they don't, that's okay.
Fantastic. And you said that you're the face of the company. You are the person leading from the front, but you don't particularly want to be. Is the goal to get other people involved in Studio 52 over time? And if that is the case, how do people watching this get on your radar if they think that they're good enough to join your team and have projects that they want to collaborate on?
Yeah, so I don't know what the answers are to that 100%, but there are many different elements to it. One is to do some projects with other people, for sure. But then it's also, we also have ideas for doing stuff like live events. So for example, I don't want to say a convention because it's the wrong type of feel. Convention paints a picture in your mind of every convention in the world is basically the same, right? And so there's a large problem I have with the way, I have ideas for different forms of conventions. And so I think that doing a live event like that is a different thing. And so I like the idea of doing that. I think bringing other people in to do some stuff is very interesting, but it would be very curated because it wouldn't just be anyone that's got a name that can pull a crowd. It will be the type of stuff that I think that fits the type of agenda and stuff that we have. And not in an elitist way, purely in terms of so that people know what they're getting. So I think those are those two areas. And the other thing is that we've got ideas for branching away from magic. There are certain things that we want to make with documentaries and stuff like that, that we think can be really, really interesting over time. So I don't know all the answers, and it's, like I said, it's been particularly difficult trying to figure some of those out in this pandemic, but I think that we're always testing the fences to find new ways, because that's ultimately what we want to do.
Amazing. And could you briefly talk to us about the book? Because that's coming out any day now, isn't it? Like, it's literally...
Inside Out.
Yeah, Inside Out. Would you mind giving us a bit of an insight into the content?
Yes. So Inside Out, we're a bit delayed with the publishers because of the publishers have reduced staff in this time, and so they informed us that there was going to be a delay, and we want to stay loyal with them, so we decided that we'd stay with them. But by the time people are watching this will probably be out. But it had a few weeks of delay, but that's fine. But the book itself is called Inside Out, and really it's about material where you are thinking of them first. So instead of trying to create material where it's look at me, like most magic is like, I'm going to do this thing, look at me, aren't I fantastic? Like, and at the end they go, clap, yes, you are fantastic. That's, or whatever it is, it's look at me do things that are impressive. I think the experience for them is a relatively, it's like quite a reductive or maybe slightly desaturated experience sometimes. It's nice to watch someone do something great, but we assume that by us doing something great, they will feel something amazing. And so to me, it's like, it's starting the other way around. It's like, what experience can I give them? So how can I create an experience in their head that becomes bigger than what I did, and where they become inextricably involved in what the effect is? So for example, I can do one kind of thing. I can show you this. This is a weird thing to do here, but this would be something like if we did, if someone was to ask you about magic and you were to say, well, I'll show you this, but I'll show you one of the hardest things to do in magic. And it's to vanish an object. And I know I shouldn't tell you this ahead of time because it kind of sets up what may or may not happen. But the reason it's so hard is because this is going to be to do with you, entirely to do with you. So what you would now do is you would have them like hold their hand out like above where, or they would grip you behind the wrist, right? So they now grip you on the wrist and you say, now watch this. So they're holding here, right? Once they're holding here, you say to them, so there are three aspects to this vanish. One, I have to make the physical coin itself vanish. And that's something I experience. Ready? Gone. Now, the second part of this is where you come in, because now I have to make the concept of this coin vanish. This coin still exists in your mind. The way to make this vanish conceptually is by showing you that it's gone, okay? Which is like this. But here's where the final part comes in, and this is why it makes the vanish so difficult, because this is where it's entirely up to you. The only way that coin can truly vanish is when you forget this moment ever happened. The moment you forget that, then it's gone. Now, for me, this type of way of approaching just a simple coin vanish, right, now locates the experience of that in a combination. It's not a philosophical place, but it's now puts them in a point where they're like, oh my God, that's really interesting. Now, if I forget, the moment I forget, he's made that coin vanish. But all the time I remember, right, it still exists. And what are they doing? Remembering that moment, something that they are responsible for. And to me, that is just a very different way about thinking of nothing other than a coin vanish. It's just a coin vanish.
That's amazing.
I mean, there's nothing else there. I mean, you'd use any coin vanish you want. I don't care. And so to me, most of Inside Out is about trying to construct magic from their perspective. Now, that's a particularly simple and philosophical one, where one moment happens and there's a kind of a philosophical bent to it. In a lot of the other material, there's a lot more happening in the effects, but that's why I use that here, because it's a particularly stark example of it. But it's a way of locating a level of responsibility with them. And now it's like, what am I watching this guy do something amazing, or is my interaction with it fundamental? And I think that's the other element, is that all of the material in there is truly interactive, where it's not just hold your hand out interactive, it's involving them. You know, there's a transposition that's in there that's really interesting, where the transposition isn't between two cards or something that's out in play. It occurs between a card out in play and one in their head. So instead of it being objects, it's like one is conceptual and one is in their hands. And it's like stuff like that, where the effect actually doesn't happen to anyone else. The effect only happens in their head. And so stuff like that, for me, I find deeply interesting. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that in there.
That's amazing. That's amazing. That's great.
Fun.
I love that. And if people want to get on, is there a mailing list? You know, if people are watching this and they're really buying into Studio 52, they want to follow what you're doing, they want to follow everything. What's the best way for them to do that, to keep up to date?
So yeah, one way is on our website, which is studio52magic.com. Jump on our mailing list, and then you hear about everything that we do. And plus, we also, to the people on our mailing list, we often have secret things that they will get that other people won't, or we let them know about that stuff, or at least we have certain plans to do some of that stuff over the next kind of few months. And then the other way is on Instagram at Studio 52. I think it's just Studio 52 on Instagram. Instagram and email are the best two ways. Henry will probably tell me another way in a minute and hold off, but I think those are the two best ways.
And the book is available for pre-order on the site.
Yes, currently.
And the 2-day convention that you talked about, that's obviously on there as well. But can people buy that retroactively? Like if they're watching this after the event, can they buy like a recording or something of that?
Yes. So all of them are, because everyone always gets confused when we say the word live, but it's because I'm doing them live and they're being recorded, and that's what you're seeing. Unlike, I think a lot of people are just, you spend a lot of time trying to get the recording right. It's fully live and it's recorded, and then that's what you see. So you can get access to everything that we've done after the fact. But yeah, it is all done live. So yeah, occasionally if there is a flash, shoot me. Like, I'm not perfect.
That's great.
No.
And the website, again, I'm going to be putting down below, and I'm obviously going to be putting it in the description. I have one other question for you, which is, what's next? And the reason I ask this is because you seem like the sort of person, Ben, that's never completely happy. No matter how much you enjoy doing something, you're always looking for something else. And I can see how passionate you are about Studio 52, and that's amazing. But are there other things on your magical bucket list that you want to achieve? Is there going to become a point when you say, well, you know what, Studio 52, I've done everything I need to do with that. Henry, you take the reins. I'm moving in a different direction, or whatever it may be. What's does the future hold for Ben Earl?
Well, I don't know, but I think it's one of the reasons that I like the the idea of the company, because it can become anything. There is nothing that it cannot do. It can be anything it wants. So I think that what will happen over time is any of those things where we'll never bin stuff. Yeah, everything, to me, it's all growth. It's all evolution. It's a process of change. And so whatever happens over time, I want to do all of it under this umbrella. I think, to me, we've worked so hard to try and build that, and we're very proud of it. So I think that's what I want to do. I think one of the things I am interested in is live events, and we've got some particular, and yes, there's some convention style things that we might do, but we've got some ideas for some particularly unique live event stuff that we're really interested in trying to do. And I don't mean like doing the thing that we're doing this weekend. We're trying to create a live event feel online. I mean doing stuff in the real world when we can all meet up again that are particularly unique, that I think that I'm really interested in, because I do think that that's where the real great stuff is. Like when you're sitting with people and you're talking and discussing and jamming and things like that, there's something in that space, really in the presence of people, where really great stuff comes out. And I think that's one. And the other is kind of documentary style stuff, where we have some ideas about traveling and telling stories, and telling stories that we think are interesting. So I think those are the two things at the moment that are at least on the radar. Within the next year to 2 years, dependent on current circumstances, that's kind of what we're looking at the moment. And that's, again, massive challenge. I don't yet know how we pull that off, or how we achieve it practically or anything, but that's the current agenda. That's the current thing.
Well, if we look at your previous record over the last 20 years, we can only assume it's going to be a massive success, because...
Well, I don't know. Well, now I'm planning it, you see. It might not be. Everything I did before, I was just Forrest Gumping my way through it. It seemed to work out. Now I'm actually going, right, what do I want to do? So I don't know. Who knows? Probably not. We'll see.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Ben, this has been an amazing interview. It's been wonderful. I've been wanting to get you on the channel for a long time, and I really appreciate you finding the time to come on here, because I know you're so busy. Thank you so much. I'm going to be putting down below your Instagram, Studio 52's Instagram, the website. I really encourage everyone to get on there and get on your mailing list, because I have completely 100% bought into what you're doing here, and I, for one, am a massive fan. So
we got him eventually. Right, we got him. Yep, done. Craig's in.
Took him a while, but I'm there. No, I think it's great. I think the industry needs this, and I think that you're the person that can make this happen. So Ben, thank you so much.
Oh, well, look, first of all, thank you for having me on. It's been lovely. Sorry I waffled on so much, probably got a bit too serious. So I can't help it. Like I take magic seriously. I don't take myself seriously, but I take magic seriously. I probably waffled on too much. I apologize for that, but thank you for being so positive and having me on and asking such good questions. So yeah, thank you.
You're more than welcome. Guys, leave a comment down below. Leave a comment. I'm sure Ben or one of his team will see this. And I'm going to be back again tomorrow with another video. So I'll see you then. But Ben, one more time, thanks very much.
Thank you.